Hi everyone, welcome back to the Motorgraph World channel. Today we'll be comparing two Asian strongholds. First, the Lexus LS 500 Hybrid, along with the Genesis G90. Let's see who is the winner. When Lexus first came out with their spindle grille design, I really didn't understand it. It just looked so out of whack to me. But now I am pretty much more used to the design, but still, in terms of preference, I would like a more of a basic design. But looking closer, you can see that the vents in front of the grille are quite wide, and the spindle design covers up a lot of the face. However, inside here, you have it blocked with the plastic. These vents, they're fake and it's just plastic. They don't open up. Headlamps, they're pointed in the front and they have a mean streak going up. So the overall face is much more aggressive. And now over to the G90. The G90 is like the big brother of all of the lineups under the Genesis model, but they haven't applied the two stripes for the headlamp, not yet, but the crest grille is applied. It's as if these are opposite of each other because the crest grille is bigger on the top and it gets narrower at the bottom, whereas the spindle grille is kind of like a hourglass shape. With the headlamps, I think I prefer these. They're a more classic design, and overall it's more of a classic, a heavier look compared to the LS 500. So now let's first take a look at the side profile of the LS 500. From a first glance, you can see that it's much more of a sportier line compared to the G90, with its lines going through from the front hood all the way to the back. I thought that they would be connected, but in fact, they're all split up into similar lines that go from the front hood to the back. You can feel that it's a more of a sportier design and a sportier car. You have the chrome details on the wheels. These are 245/45 20-inch wheels, a little bit bigger compared to the G90, but I don't think that there will be a huge difference there. Now let's take a look at the G90. The side profile is a bit more streamlined compared to the Lexus. It has one continuing line across the top as well as the bottom. There's no cuts, and it's just very clean from top to bottom with the roof, the middle, and the bottom point. I prefer that in a side profile design for classic themes and classic cars. But for the G90, I think that it works because it's such a big and huge car. As for the wheels, you have the silver wheels, but you have 245/45 19-inch wheels, slightly smaller compared to the LS 500. The rear end of both cars, I think, befit each other. I can't really decide which is better, but let's take a look at one by one. First, the LS 500 Hybrid. As I mentioned from the front, it has a sportier looking backside with the overall design looking as if it's going slightly upward and ending up at the rear end. With the tail lights as well as the bumper, it's slightly a bit sportier in terms of the design. I really did like the tail lights and the blinkers when they were turned on. It was quite nice actually. And now the G90 compared to the LS is very much heavier, and the backside looks a little bit bland compared to the LS 500. I guess because for this segment in Korea, a lot of the CEOs or C-level executives ride the G90, and they ride it with a chauffeur. So I believe it's befitting that kind of segment. The LS 500, at first glance, it looks quite small compared to other competitors in this segment. A lot of Koreans usually ride this segment for golfing, and they like their golf bags to be included or to be carried in their trunk. But it looks as if it will only be able to carry one golf bag. But even the lower compartments, they're not that large. This one just has the toolkit for your repair, and it has smaller compartments on each side, but they're all for small tools, and it's very shallow. So here is the trunk of the G90. Even without having to measure the trunk size, it looks slightly larger than the LS500. I bet that they took in the feedback of the customers because they wanted more golf bags to be carried in their trunk. It's also covered in a type of fuzzy material, but this is a bit more coarse compared to the LS500. And it opens up to a lower compartment. It doesn't have a spare tire included, but some of the exported models do have a spare tire. You only have the repair kit for the Korean version. So now I'm inside the LS500, and it's a very distinctly different design. I think that it's a very Lexus design. Overall, in terms of visibility, it's a bit narrower than I expected, with the A-pillar slightly coming into your line of sight. The steering wheel is much smaller than the most of the cars in this segment, and it also has a very small digital gauge in the middle. But the center fascia, you have a wider horizontal shaped display, which also applies touch, but you can also use it on this small touchpad down here. Lexus had applied this touchpad before in other models, but a lot of the customers weren't too happy about it, so now they have a touch display so that you can use both. As for the center console, you can open up this way for the driver, or you can open it up on this side, so they open up on both ways. The seats are quite comfortable. They have a lot of cushion. The side bolsters give you great grip. It's more like a sportier version for the seats. They're smaller than the G90, and it fits me better, and for the lumbar support and the side bolsters as well. It's more snug compared to the G90. Now I'm in the second row seats of the LS500, and I must say it's very comfortable. I have more than enough leg room, and the design and the materials are very luxurious. I have a display right in front of me for both of the seats, left and right. Let's try pulling down the armrest. And immediately you see this digital panel that you can control. So you have the audio, the temperature for the seats, the adjustment of the seats left and right, the relax mode of the seats, and you also have an option for the shades and lamps. So you can adjust the lamps towards one side, or you can also adjust the shades, which is also very cool. It's done automatically. You can pull them up, and you can also make them go away with just a touch of the panel. The seats are very comfortable, just like the ones that I saw on the driver's seat. And with the relax modes, I think that you'll have a very comfortable ride in the back seat. So what's also very cool about when you're sitting in the rear seats is that you can adjust the passenger seat in front. You can fold it, you can completely lay it down to your needs. And it's just done with the touch of a button here. One drawback, I would assume, is that the windows are slightly smaller, but it doesn't really bother me that much. So now we've changed cars, and I am in the driver's seat of the G90. It's very clear that the G90 has a much wider viewing angle. I think the top half of the Lexus LS 500 is a bit smaller compared to the G90. The A-pillar doesn't bother me that much. Overall, the interior design of the G90 feels a bit more old-fashioned compared to the LS 500. The wood veneers, the layout, and the materials that are used, they're luxurious, but a bit old-fashioned. However, I do like the fact that they have a wider gauge panel and the long digital panel that you see in the center. And on top here, you don't have a lot going on except for the head-up display, so you have more visibility for the front window. As for the center fascia and the control systems in the middle, you have the analog buttons. And down here where you have the gear knob, it's a bit more streamlined. It's very simple, so you know where everything is compared to the LS, which was a bit more complicated. Considering this is the flagship sedan model of Genesis, it would be the highest trim among its brothers. It's the big brother. But if you look at the materials that are used in the interior, even if it's silver colored, this is plastic and it's coated. Whereas on the LS 500, if it was in silver, it was aluminum, and even with the plastic materials, they were a bit more sophisticated. Whereas this model, you see the same materials, the plastic as well as softer matte plastic that is used. The same ones that have been used in all of the other lower grade models are used G90. So one interesting fact, you can really see that the G90 is not a driver's car, but it's more of a chauffeur-driven car for the rear seats. If you go into the custom mode of the driving modes, you have the comfort feature for the rear seats. This is for extra comfort for those sitting in the rear seats. The seat for the G90 is a bit wider and it still is very comfortable. For me, I preferred the seats on the LS 500. So now I'm in the second row seats of the G90, and compared to the LS 500, it seems that it's a bit wider, but my legroom, it's very similar. And the seats are quite comfortable for this one as well. And you have a lot of the controls in the center console. The center console is connected to the center console for the driver, and you have this tunnel right here. So you don't have any middle seats for the second row. For the center console, you have an opening here that you can use as the ski-through, but the hole is quite small. And there's a lot of knobs on the center console that adjust the various settings. You have the seat adjustments on both sides, here, and you also have the central knobs in the middle. You also have the sunshades, just like the LS 500. You can control them with just one click. I think what was more convenient for the LS 500 was that everything was controlled on the digital panel in the center. So you didn't have to look around to find the right knobs and the right buttons. But for the G90, if you have two passengers in the back sitting at once, then both of them can adjust their seats whenever they want without having to wait for the other person who's controlling the middle display. So I guess that it's also an issue of preference. Another good point about the rear seats of the G90 is that it has a wider window, so you get more visibility for those people sitting in the back. So now we're on the highway with the LS 500 hybrid, and maybe because it's a hybrid model, you can actually feel it when you're stepping on the gas. It's not that much of a smooth ride if you compare the G90 with the LS 500, and the steering wheel also handles a bit heavier compared to the G90. In terms of acceleration, it's quite responsive, but the car does seem or feel heavier when you're stepping on the gas. So here is the knob to switch the drive modes. Right now it's on Eco. You can also have it on Comfort. And you hear the difference in the drive mode when you step on the gas. So that was Sport Plus. Given that this is a flagship sedan, it's quite comfortable overall. But compared to the G90, I think that it's a bit more firm and a bit harder. The G90, I felt that it was very bouncy and flouncy, but this one is a bit more sportier. The second row seats, as you have seen before, have a lot of controls and dials that can fix your seating position. So can we switch it to comfort mode? There is a slight change in the suspension that I feel from the back seat. The wheels don't really pick up any vibration or bumps from the road. I did mention that the windows on the LS500 were smaller than the G90. This small pillar for the window does get in your way, in your line of sight. Some people, I guess, might prefer a smaller window just for privacy issues too. Or they could use a shade. So while we are cruising at around 50 kilometers per hour, the noise inside is around 56 decibels. I don't feel that it's noisy at all. We have the air conditioning going on inside, so that might also contribute to a couple of decibels there. Okay, we're now revving up. 60 decibels at 90 kilometers per hour. Can we switch it to sports mode? Not that much difference from where I'm sitting right now. So let me try and pull the seats back completely. So that's how far it goes. You could basically take a nap. So we've switched over to the G90. So far, it's been quite similar. Both of them are very comfortable in the rear seat. Comfort level, I think the LS500 was a little bit more comfortable and spongy. We're currently driving on the comfort mode. As for the vibrations from the road or the suspension, I think that this is a little bit more floppier or bouncier compared to the LS500. And now can we turn on the comfort rear mode? Maybe it's because of the speed, but I do feel a little bit of a difference. It's become much quieter how everything feels. I was quite skeptical about this comfort rear suspension mode because, you know, how can you really make a difference how the passenger seat feels? But I was wrong because it actually does make a difference. And now there's a speed bump coming up. Even softer. Okay. It is a matter of preference, but for me, I think the LS500 is a bit more comfortable for the second row seats. And the noise level, we're going to check at around 90 kilometers per hour. The noise level inside the car was 59, so very similar to that of the Lexus. So it's around 55 decibels, around 60 kilometers per hour. But I think that's a little to do with the air conditioning, because for the LS, we had air conditioning coming in from the backside and I could really hear that. That's why I had turned off the air conditioning from the top part for the LS. But for the G90, you have the air vents on the center console and of course the door trim, and they're not as noisy. We're back in the G90 in the driver's seat. Just compared to the LS500, this car feels more like a much more comfortable sedan. The G90 is definitely more bouncier. The LS500 was a bit more heavier and sturdier. When you're stepping on the gas, you really had to step on it in order to get that traction going for the speed. For the G90, it's quite effortless. You don't really have to do much. We're driving at 100 kilometers per hour right now, but I don't really feel that it's going that fast. And I didn't have to put in a lot of effort to get to this speed. It was just very easy. I just needed to gently step on the acceleration. It just shoots out. And as for the steering wheel too, you don't need to put that much force into it in order to turn or change lanes. So I think my mom would really like this car. Whereas for the LS500, it would be better suited for maybe like my brother, who is more into sportier sedans. We will check the mileage on the G90 once we get to our destination. But when we did a midterm test, while I was driving the LS500 and our producer was driving the G90, because of the hybrid characteristics, the LS500 definitely had an upper hand on the mileage. We drove around the same area, but it turns out that you get double the mileage with the LS500. But it looks like the G90 will improve slightly, but maybe it's because we're driving on the highway. And now we're at our destination, and the mileage comes down to 9.9 kilometers per liter. Range that we drove was 16.9 kilometers. So it's not that great, but considering that this is a large-sized sedan, it would be probably comparable to some other models. So what did you think about our comparison between Lexus and Genesis, or more specifically the LS500 hybrid and the G90? Personally, I like the interior design of the Lexus and the mileage that it performed. So post your comments down below and remember to subscribe. We'll see you next time.